Alright, keeping this to about 30 minutes as fast as I can. It will cut me at the 30-minute mark, as I have said it. Let this be known as a disclaimer that I don't really give a shit about clicks nor views. I'm not doing this because I want ratings or any kind of service from YouTube. I'm doing this as a quick response and a quick record so I can link this to people who are reciting anti or conservative propaganda, in which I have had to repeatedly retort over the course of, well, at least a year now. And given that I have repeated that so often, I have decided to make this video. With that said, creation of the conflict is no different from basically the way that Trump goes about things. Take America back. Make America great again. General isolation of one group being, if you take that group into context, let's say the United States, then you say that this group is bad against that group. That's where we have the conservatives versus the immigrants, and not the liberals, because the liberals are the ones defending the immigrants, which basically means you have the division, isolation. And then we have the hostility manners in which the creation of conflict exists as a means of, to say, the conservatives are saying that anybody who defends immigrants is defending terrorism, or as Trump puts, we can't have a state if we don't have borders. Anybody who doesn't want a border wall is trying to destroy America, because you can't have America without walls or borders. That is the basic gist of the conversation. So that means that the Republican Party is currently advocating for a terrorist who wants domestic terrorism to fight and prove a basic point. We need a wall to prevent violence, but they are basically taking up arms with the sole point of saying we need to stop violence with violence. I know this because I've had plenty of conversations with NRA people, militia members, and gun advocates. They basically say unless you've killed someone, unless you've been in the military, you do not have a right to say anything. You do not have a right to speech if you have not taken a life. Then they basically say unless you have served, you have no rights to say anything at all. And when it comes to like their information sources, they basically say that anybody who disagrees with them is wrong, because they do not believe that they believe that any voice that contradicts their own is biased, and therefore you cannot listen. Therefore they show that they are not open-minded. It also shows they are isolated, because their sources of information is extremely limited also by choice. Therefore we can see that they do not really want to be as educated as they claim. As proven to this fact, when I was in SL, I was talking to a person in a club, and he was spreading fake news about Bill Nye, the science guy. He goes to ask the question, why Bill Nye? Because Bill Nye talked about how global warming is a real thing on Fox News, and they would call him crazy for it. And then they try to discredit him. Why? Because he gave them facts that was contradictory to the facts that they were given, and the only facts that they were given were cherry-picked and extremely biased. Therefore, that they wanted just to be right. They didn't care about whether or not there was facts or involved. They cared more about winning, which also goes to show isolation and the creation of conflict. To say that they want to be right to the point in which they are willing to silence anyone forcefully who disagrees with them in any way. Which also goes to the point that they are the ones who want the guns, and they say only good people should have guns. If that was true, then they'd be the ones who should not ever have guns, because they themselves are the very evidence in why they should not. I've had plenty of conversations with people who One of the big conversations about Bill Nye was that he was not a real scientist, and in which they cited that he said he was not a real scientist. But what he really said was that he does not have a PhD, he has a bachelor and other degrees, and that he does not, he chooses not to hold the title of a scientist, but he does have the merits of a scientist. There are scientists that do not have a master's degree. You only need a master's degree in specific fields and specific jobs. And then it becomes a basic point of when I was talking with this particular person, they said that Bill Nye said that there was 76 genders. And when he sent me the video to prove it, it actually disproved it. And when I pointed that out, he flipped out and had a tantrum. To which I just kind of just silently let him, you know, try to hurt my feelings. But at the same time I was looking at that, I was wondering, you are calling me a snowflake, a liberal snowflake, about not being outraged about Bill Nye talking about psychology as it affects gender's identification, and that is a science. Psychology is a science, and there really was nothing wrong with what Bill Nye was talking about. But the only reason why they were attacking it was, again, because they want to attack Bill Nye's credibility for the sole sake of because he was oppositional to them. Which goes to say that they do not want to be unbiased. When discussing with them, they talk about how these mass shooting victims are being propped up on TV, and how wrong it was that these people were being propped up on TV because they were because it was politicizing their pain. When you look at this, you have to look on both sides of the spectrum to say that the Republican Party, discussing how victims of immigrant crime were a thing, and to that we can easily go back to the election campaign of Donald Trump, in which he would have a Hispanic lady talk about how immigrants did all these bad things to her at his rallies before he got to the podium, as a means of stirring up anti-immigrant violence and trying to plagiarize immigrants as the source of all violence. And to make another distinction of how the conservative has become the party of pro-violence, they focus on immigrants as isolation, to say that they are trying to peg them as the enemy. They are saying this group of individuals are wrong. And if you try to correct them on the difference between illegal, undocumented, and legal, they will flip their fucking shit about political correctness, Argo, which is why we have the whole political correctness, anti-political correctness thing on the right versus the left that doesn't really give a shit. I mean, I've looked. You cannot find much when it comes to political correctness outrage. You find a lot about outrage against people who are outraged about political correctness, in which they are the right will try to muddy things, and to which, I further go back to just a situation that I encountered in the club just a couple of days ago, where a guy was saying that the left wants smaller government, not the right, and I corrected him about that, and he started calling me liberal and triggered and shit, and had a little tantrum, and I'm like, so it came to the point in that conversation where I do say this a lot to Republicans, and the right particularly. I've never had to tell it to the left, surprisingly, but there is a thing on Family Guy where where Peter is talking to Congress, and he says that anybody who doesn't like a war is gay. Okay, and I bring that up because that is what the Republican Party is now. They are a parody of Family Guy, trying to make us feel like if we don't hate immigrants, we're gay. Or if we don't hate the Mexicans, we're gay. You know, if we don't hate China, we're gay. If we don't think there's a trade deficit, then we're gay and all that shit. It's like, come on, people. Do you really think we care? I'm sorry, I've laughed in so many people's faces about these things. A while ago, some guy tries to tell me that that he believes purely in a peace through force, which in a sense, you don't have peace through force. You have immense bloodshed. You have mass shootings. You have people who go on buses who yell at people racially because you think that, hey, everybody's good, right? Only good hombres should have guns, right? I keep telling them that the right doesn't quite understand that the difference between a good person today is that they haven't committed a crime yet tomorrow. And, the whole people change over time, people slip up over time. It's basic. It comes through the tests and trials. The only difference is how much you can restrain a person from doing violence or harm to others. And that's what's important. Having accountability, having restraint systems to let people have their frustrations, but not do it in a way that is permanent damage or in a sense that has infringing on other people's rights. A friend of mine sent me a thing called education, and I say it slowly because trying to pronounce that from education is different. Education, an extent in which there's a YouTube video of it. Try taping that a shun, as in shunning. Okay, as shun. And so try and look at that. It's great. That is how the conservatives attack liberals in a sense. If you try to correct them in any way, they'll talk about how you're verbally abusing them and such. And it's and you also have the whole where they think that liberals are bad because we want to protect immigrants' rights to basic living. Because apparently conservatives don't see every human being as equal. And I find that funny because they're the ones always talking about fighting for rights and all that shit. And then I see things on their YouTube forums about their outrage and shit. And it's fun to watch them contradict themselves in their actions and then try to muddy things up in their words. And it's kind of like listening to the Kelly and Conjob talk about alternative facts. I'm about 10 minutes in, so I'm going to try to keep this short. The whole point in which we say the NRA is wanting civil war is very simple. They want to flood the market with guns, which is, as we see, what they're doing. They're trying to put guns in schools, so apparently they think teachers don't make mistakes or can't make crimes either. Need not remind you, Obama wanted to make it so police can be judged as criminals when they commit a crime too. It was the Republican Party that's against that. So yeah, keep that in mind because everybody, we understand cops do it too, but the difference is that cops' jobs is to enforce the law. So it's not exactly a school teacher's job to enforce the law. Okay, they're not going to be called, they don't have a PC dispatcher, sort of thing. Police control dispatcher. Yeah, if anyone gets that. So, the issue that I find is a while ago when having this conversation with this particular fellow, he asked me my age as a means of deflection or trying to make me feel bad about being, quote, ignorant, because apparently they care more about being superior. So then it comes to the whole point of, do you want to, do the whole being in pursuit of a better union, or do you just want to have your union, so to speak? And they obviously just want their union. They don't want a more perfect union. They want a white their union, which we know they want a white union because they have already extradited, or how do we say, focused their outrage against people who are of different color. Black Lives Matter, Antifa, anti-racist groups, the fuck, MS-13, okay, and other people, and other California, okay, California would be one of them. California, for instance, just to put into perspective, and MS-13 and Antifa, okay. One, California is not in the top 10 of the most violent states. They are not in the top 20 last I checked. The most violent states that I've seen, the most unsafe states, is Illinois. And predominantly red states, southern red states, predominantly make up the list of top 10 most unsafe states in America. As for GDP, California ranks on the top 10, I think it was. Blue states predominantly make up the top 10 highest GDP states in America. I listed that in my Facebook thing, but I'm not entirely sure. I have to organize things a little bit better on my YouTube page. I'm not exactly what you call organized, because my lacks of fucks to give. I'm sorry, conservatives, if you're watching this and you're outraged. I'm sorry. The fucks to give, you know, we pre-order the fucks. They haven't come in. No fucks to give. I'm sorry. No, we are fresh out of fucks. But the issue that we see is that when it comes to like the right cannibalizing themselves for the sake of extremely polarized cultish behavior, has to go a lot with the right's attack on Bill 9. California and MSN13, because they think that apparently they don't have any gangs. You know, they think gangs is a big thing. They forget America is a big place. We have the right to union. Gangs exist. I'm sorry. And then we have the Muslim militia, where they're like, hey, it's ISIS. ISIS is having Muslim things. Like, I'm sorry, dudes. You guys have your militia, and, you know, Muslim people, you know, they can have their militias, you know, and Catholic people have there's some Catholic militias out there. There's militias for every flag. I'm sorry. There's the 3%ers. There's fuck. I don't know, there's a lot of them. I can't remember them all. But, these people, they act like their shit is better than everyone else's, and all they are is just part of the problem. They don't recognize that they are the source of the problem, in a sense. And they are trying to be the dominant force, and they don't understand that their need for dominance over coexistence leads to conflict and bloodshed. And when it comes to what we see on the Mueller side, you know, Mueller's a registered Republican, and yet they are constantly attacking him as an Obama plant or a Democrat, and it's like, no, he's a Republican. And if you know, the big thing that stems the difference between, you know, left and the right is that defines the difference is action versus rhetoric. And when it comes to the right, we see the right cannibalizing its own. And when it comes to the left, you know, we're welcoming of you Republicans. You know, we don't hate Mueller. We actually respect Mueller. We hate Comey, but we respect him in the sense that he was an FBI director. He's made his mistakes. The only thing we blame him for is what he did, which was lie to the American people about the Hillary email investigation during the election. That's it. I'm sorry, people. We do not hold outrage against him because of his affiliation to the Republican Party. We do not have outrage for him because of his association to Trump. we have outrage for him because he lied to the people. I'm sorry. And then be ready for the outrage. Be ready for the snowflakes. I see the snowflakes coming. But it's a thing where they are they're fighting for smaller government, but then they're saying that the left wants smaller government. They're fighting against immigration by saying chain migration brings in everybody and their aunt, which is a lie. And they are refusing to look at open sources like, say, MSNBC. Like, for instance, liberals will look at Alex Jones, MSNBC, Fox News, and we got the Middle East Eye. That was something that came up recently. And The Hill, we got the Federalist, The Intercept, BuzzFeed, Breitbart, pick one. We don't exactly discriminate on our news sources. We do, however, get our news sources predominantly from the ones that have the resources to broadcast more openly. Per se, like cable news channels, they do things. We also listen more to people who are not overtly insulting our intelligence like Fox News does. I'm sorry, Fox News, we don't respect them, but at the same time, we also look at you, at the people on the right, and we're looking at you like, I get what you're doing. I get what you're doing. You're saying you're not a left. You're saying you're not on the right. You're not a conservative. But you are fighting against the left, and you are protecting Trump, and you are fighting for more guns. You are saying that it's not about party politics, but the left plays party politics, even though the left isn't. And there's currently an intellectual war going on between the right and the left, where the right is accusing the left of doing what the right does. And like, it's very predominant that it's like you guys lie about being unbiased, okay? You lie about being fair and being like doing your own research, okay? I've seen like when that guy sent me that video, he's like, hey, I have this video of Bill Nye saying he's not a scientist and saying there's 76 genders, but he didn't say that. Okay? And because of that, we know you guys are playing party politics. Because of that, we know that you are fucking Trump cult worshippers. That's all this is. And the only reason the whole global warming came up at all was because Trump said that it was a Chinese hoax to hinder the competitiveness of America. I mean, you guys care so much about winning. You don't care about coming to the floor and having a talk. Every fucking conversation that I have with a Republican, it's all about winning. All about fucking winning. I mean, I had a conversation with a very nice lady, what was her name again? Fluffy Buns. She's a nice lady. She used to be a Republican. She defected. I can understand why she defected. I think she's like independent or something. But the point being is, people on the left understand that there are people who are respectable on the right, that you guys are there because, back in the day before Trump, the Republican Party was considered respectable. They weren't just a predominantly white culture, nor did they predominantly attack any other culture, like, name one kind of thing. Attacking Asians, saying that they're market manipulators, and that the Chinese are being, quote, unfair to us because they do things better and shit. And it's like, I'm gonna pull a thing from South Park. They had a thing about this. And it was some disabled kid and his friend trying to get back at another disabled kid in a go-kart race of some kind, related to taxi cabs. I think it was. Where basically, they're talking about how one business is driving another business out, and jeez, what was that one kid's name on that show? I forget the guy's name, but he basically interrupts the guy and he says, you know, you guys should clean up your cabs and try to make yourselves more competitive in the market by putting better prices and better customer service and, you know, modernize your facilities and all that stuff. He was talking about, you know, improving your, quote, competitiveness instead of whining about how other competition manages to do it better. And then talking about your, quote, and I love using this phrase, quote, entitlement outrage. You guys rage against liberals about that, where, you know, you think we're entitled because we have these entitlement programs for the poor, and it's basically to help people get on their feet, and you guys are basically talking about how wrong it... Holy shit, damn it. Did I go over my time? Maybe. Anyways, I'll wrap this up. But he was you guys talk about the how other people are stealing your gerbs because you guys are so defective that other people are running out of business with better performance. I'm sorry to say, people, you know, if they do it right, you can't hate them for doing it right. You gotta hate yourself because, you know, like, don't hate the player, hate the game kind of thing. I'm sorry, people. And when it comes to, like, the whole American first entitlement bullshit, yeah, it's like the globalists are evil and all that. We don't really care where our services come from. If I buy a monitor, I'm not really looking at where it's built. I'm looking at the resolution, you know, the lifespan of the monitor, you know, the image, you know, the connections. You know, I'm looking more at the performance, compatibility with the parts. I'm not exactly saying like, huh, you know, I really wonder if it's made America because I don't want to buy Japanese shit. No, we don't think about that. I'm sorry. When it comes to, like, lumber, they're like, oh, you know, what can we get first? You know, what's cheaper? What's more durable? You know, what's more cost effective but not compromising integrity and all that shit. You know, you guys really are painfully entitled shits. And then you complain about how entitled liberals are. And it's like, why do you guys care about immigrants so much and imports and exports? It's like, I'm sorry, you know, it's called cooperation. We don't isolate ourselves from the rest of the world. We're not afraid of the world. I'm sorry, people. Anyway, so I'm not entirely sure if I've gone over my time or not, so I'm going to wrap this up right here. I've reached 1 gig of my bandwidth, unfortunately, so have fun. I hope to organize my shit later on and possibly open up a channel depending on comments and shit. Maybe. I've heard some people say I need to be more active. Some people like my content. That's nice and all. I like that. That's cool. I'm like, but I didn't really make this for clicks. I didn't make this for recognition. But at the same time, you know, it's like I want to make a point clear of what's going on right now and how things exist and why people are the way they are in the current political structure. I saw a report recently where they were saying that you know, the conservative... Oh yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about earlier, the conservative mindset. I don't believe that the mind is wired in a sense in which hardwiring exists. I think that the brain wires itself depending on the person's development as they come to age. So, like, you know, professional skills, what they come to learn, understand, all that stuff develops the human mind, their ideology, and all that shit. I believe that the only reason why conservative minds are so identifiable from liberal minds is because of the fear-mongering and the indicative distinctiveness and precision of their hostilities and anger. So I think that the reason why they do these things is because they need to oppress liberal ideology for the sense of only because it's liberal, and by doing so, by saying that liberals are oppressing their conservative ideals with facts and science, which is why they banned fact-based and science-based from the CDC recently. And it's essentially, that's the gist of it. I think that, the conservatives are spreading a disease of fear and hardwiring their kids and population with fear and hate to perpetrate what currently is the party of hostility, the party of bloodshed, in a sense, I'm sorry to say.